Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Senate Finance and Assembly Committee on Ways and Means, Subcommittee on Public Safety, Natural Resources, and Transportation. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assemblymember Anderson? Present. Assemblymember Brown May? Here. Assemblymember Dickman? Here. Assemblymember Hibbets? Here. Assemblymember Mosca? Here. Senator Nguyen, sorry.
Here.
Senator Titus? Assemblymember Watts? Chair Taylor?
And I am here. Please mark Senator Titus present when she arrives. Good morning, everybody here, and we have some folks in Las Vegas, and we may even have some people online. My name is Senator Angie Taylor, and I'll be chairing the joint subcommittee today. We already have the roles. Assemblymember Watts, please mark him absent excused. Okay, before we start the hearing, let's just go over a few housekeeping items, which I'm sure you've heard a bunch of times, but it's in my remarks, so that's what I'm going to do. For those providing testimony today, please, when you come to the witness table, please remember to state your name for the record each time before you speak. The meeting is being video conferenced, and it helps to record and helps them also to hear it. And so it's also important that we keep accurate records of who's speaking. And if you are presenting or giving public comment, if you have a business card, please make sure you give it to our staff before you leave so that they can keep track of that as well. If you want to, at the end of the meeting, we will have public comment. If you would like to call in, I'm going to give you the number to provide public comment telephonically. Please dial 888-475-4499. And then when you're prompted, provide the meeting ID. The meeting ID today is 894-3493-4285. And then press the pound button when prompted. And I'll give that again right before we do public comment, because you may not remember it. Okay, today we have 7 departments. We have 7 Department of Public Safety budgets on the agenda. So please come forward, whomever's doing the presenting. Okay, we have budgets 4706, 3775, 4730, 4713, 4721, 3740, and 4687. It says here that we were going to have the director, right? George Taligi? Help me with that.
Tagliotti.
Oh, that's what I said. Tagliotti. Yes, me and George. Okay, Tagliotti. Sorry, George. So obviously George is not here. Okay, so then we'll welcome you. So please just state your name for the record, spell it if you need to, and then begin when you are ready.
Good morning, Chair Taylor and Chair Committee members. I am Sherry Brigham, Deputy Director with the Department of Public Safety. Unfortunately, Director Tagliotti had other commitments this morning and couldn't make the meeting. But we are here to present the budgets, and I'm sure that should you have any questions specifically for him, he'd be happy to get back to you. To my left is Kim Smith. She is our PIO. And to my right is Christy Defer. She's our Senior Fiscal Officer who will be presenting most of the budget. And my question to you, would you like us to move quickly, or do you want to spend some time on these budgets?
Well, I have some colleagues that I know are trying to get to the airport, but we do want to make sure we do a thorough job. So how about somewhere there in the middle? And then we will have some questions, I believe, along the way.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, you bet. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, chairs and committee members. For the record, my name is Christy Defer, and I am the Senior Fiscal Officer from the Nevada Department of Public Safety. I will be presenting an overview of the budgetary request for the Director's Office Budget Account 4706. And I wanted to also ask the chair if it would be permissible if we discussed Budget Account 4730 within our presentation, because it's directly tied into our Director's Office requests. If not, we can do it separately.
It is an agenda item, so we really aren't going to be able to do that.
Okay. All right, no
Okay,
problem.
so because people need to know what's happening so they can come if they'd like to. Is it agendized? Oh, 47:30, it is agendized. So,
I
yeah,
just didn't want to have
please.
to,
No, go.
sit down and come back
No,
up.
no,
and-
no, you can do those together.
Okay,
That's just
okay,
fine.
all right,
Thank you.
perfect.
My apologies. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, the Nevada State Police serves as a law enforcement agency across Nevada, coordinating with local, state, and federal agencies and community partners to provide the highest level of public safety services for Nevadans and visitors to the Silver State. As you all know, the DPS has struggled with hiring and retention in years past, specifically with our sworn and dispatch classifications. We are pleased to discuss our progress in these areas and share with this committee our proposed plans to build upon this momentum in the upcoming biennium. Here's our org chart. I won't dwell on that one, but there's our many years of leadership within our organization. Specifically, here's the director's office org chart. This first one is kind of our fiscal and payroll accounting positions. And the next one, we have our public safety state police communications team. And in red circle, that's one of the positions that we are requesting in this budget, the digital media specialist. We'll get more into that in a little bit. And then here is our human resources organizational chart. Again, we have some positions circled there, which we will get into as we get further into our presentation. And finally, we have our research, planning, and technology unit. And also, we have some positions that we are requesting in that unit as well. So this slide compares departmental sworn separated versus hired ratio. We are excited to report that for the first year since 2017, we have had to date in fiscal year 2024 more hires than separations. We attribute these numbers to the success of our All-Star recruitment campaign that was initiated mid-2024 as a pilot program funded with ARPA grant funding. And so we have made strides in hiring and retention, but we still struggle with certain divisions with both sworn and civilian positions. So it's really critical that we continue our efforts so we don't lose more ground. And I would like to point out the vacancies in our records communication and compliance division with the dispatchers. The dispatch pay is just not competitive, and I know we've discussed that a little bit in previous presentations, but we're trying to work with the governor's office and the governor's finance office to find solutions. The All-Stars campaign has increased our applicants for sworn positions by nearly 71% from 2023 to 2024. And we've accomplished this with a really aggressive social media campaign, and we are also really ensuring that the potential candidates are engaged and guided through the hiring process so we don't lose them. The All-Star staff has been amazing in helping to augment the numbers that we are able to bring in just on our own organically, which is shown on that slide. And with that, I will turn it over to Deputy Director Brigham.
Sherry Brigham for the record. I believe they have my spelling, but that's BRUEGGEMANN. And I'm going to be talking about our All-Stars year-end program. And we're very, very excited about the numbers that we've been seeing. If you go to the next page, you're going to see some of our numbers that through the campaigns, we picked up 700 applications, 235 in the north, 465 in the south. And for us, that's really significant considering out of every 100, we might get one over the finish line into the academy. So those numbers are critical that we see volume coming in. And I have to point out, because it's not on a slide, that without the raises that you gave them last biennium, I would have had nothing to market. So this bringing them close to the competing markets of the counties and the cities and that sort of thing of law enforcement made it something where I really could put ads out there and say, hey, we're the best of the best and we're competitive too. So that made a difference. We are looking at 6,426 candidates that came down to 700 applications, and the cost per candidate is $18.48. Doesn't seem bad. And the cost per application is $169 per application, which is kind of pricey. But compared to what? So that question's going to come up over and over again. Do we really want to spend this kind of money on marketing? And my answer to that is we can no longer assume that just because we're here, the people are going to come to us. We've got a smaller group of people we're working towards, and the labor market just isn't what it used to be. And those of us who have been in the labor market for a while are retiring. And we need to find a way to reach the people who might want to fill these jobs. So I point that out as I don't have anything to compare it to, except that my loss of an officer is significantly more than that. The next one is comparison of total applicants. And this again compares applicants to the prior year. And it is almost double. And that's what we're looking for, is get me the applicants, we'll weed through them. One of the things that we did this year is we are using 2 officers from our divisions to be actual recruiters. They are out in the field working with the military people, anything and everybody we can think of, the colleges, the schools. They're the ones taking the phone calls from the potential people. They're the ones locked into the computer system that All Stars is doing for us. They keep the numbers for us so that these 2 recruiters are constantly in touch with our applicants, and they walk them through the system so that I get a number every time I lose somebody. I get a number every time I win somebody, too. So when we get down to it, we know that our applications are coming in by lead sources, and most of them are coming in from the Meta, which is the Facebook type lead. Then there's Google, and then there's Indeed. Organic, you'll see that on charts. That is charts that we can't specifically tie to our campaigns because their email didn't come in through the system that they set it up for. But because it's a significant increase over the same period over the prior year, chances are they are driven by the ad. Either way, it works for us. Our conversion rate is still lower than we'd like. So if we take the number of candidates that come in versus the applications, we're only getting 10% of those candidates into the application forum. Now, All Stars and us as a group discuss this every week. We go through the numbers, and the biggest slowdown seems to be our NEAT system, which is obviously set up for an upgrade coming up in July. We do hope that's going to help because the application process is kind of messy. It's difficult for a lot of people, but it's still not really accounting for the low conversion rate. So in addition to helping them through this system, we do, it's not video, VREs. It is virtual recruitment. So every month, the first Wednesday of the month, my team and I, which includes 2 of my captains in charge of the training facilities and quite a few of our recruiters and officers, get online and do an event. And the people who are new to the All-Stars, who have come through their checkpoint, get invited to these. And we have 250, 300 people sign up for these events. We've had over 100, 150 at one show up to the event. And we just go online and talk to them about what it's like to be an officer here in the state. And that really, really seems to make a difference. So when you look down at all the details, we believe we have gotten down to 39 candidates so far that have been sent offer letters, which for us is huge. That means they're starting in a future academy. Our next hope is now we get to follow these applicants through the process. Did they make it through the academy? You know, have they been here a year? Have they been here 2 years? Can we really tie these numbers down so that we can figure out a more targeted approach? We're working towards that. And this is the only system we've ever had to be able to track any of that because none of the personnel systems that we've had here do any of that. It would have been hand checking, and which is such a significant volume, we never could have done it. So I will be available for more questions. The next couple of pages with more details on the virtual recruitments and the attendance rate and the conversion rate. So 38% of the people who sign up actually show up, and I think we have a pretty good time. I actually have little reports for each one of those VREs since we started them, and on it is a link that will take you to a recording of it. So if any of you at any time would like to see one of those, I can send them to you. Or if you'd like to attend one of those, I can send you the date and the time, and you can attend and watch. But we have been very, very pleased with the success. And I will skip over the rest because it's there for you to review, and give it back to you, Christy.
Christy Defer again for the record. I will now discuss the division's specific budgetary requests. The first decision units focus on marketing and recruitment. And as I discussed in the opening, I'm going to discuss budget account 4730 first, which is our one-shot budget account. And this includes one decision unit, E280, which is funding the one-shot funding for the recruitment campaign that targets the officer and dispatch classifications for the Nevada State Police. So this would continue the recruitment campaign that the deputy director was just discussing into the next biennium. It's a pilot program. As the deputy director said, we just started this mid last year, and we've had great success, and we really want to keep that momentum going into the biennium and then measure those results and evaluate if it would be a request in future biennium. Moving into budget account 4706, the first decision unit is E275, which requests to add one new digital media specialist to assist the department with digital recruitment and retention. We have seen the power of social media, as we've discussed, and the exponential impact it can have. And having a full-time position dedicated to expanding our social media presence, tracking metrics to measure success is going to be an enormous assistance to our one dedicated PIO position that is just not sufficient for a department of our size and with the type of specialized challenges that we have. Next is E278, which requests funds the installation of cubicle wall partitions for the Public Safety Background Investigation Unit. They currently don't have anything that's separating their desks, and for privacy and defined workspaces, we would request that that decision unit be funded. We also would request E279, which would add one additional background technician to our background unit, which would assist us in expediting these background investigations that come in and that we are anticipating will come in from the recruitment campaign. This request is based on a detailed analysis of the workload metrics and the anticipated growth in demand for both civilian and sworn position investigations. The second set of requests are for our research planning and technology unit. This unit was transferred from the Nevada Highway Patrol to the director's office last session to centralize these critical support operations. This unit oversees our departmental operation of our CAD software, our citation software, body in-car cameras, and other software and technologies that are specific to law enforcement and our organization. The duties transferred with them last session, but no additional positions were provided. So E285 requests to add an IT manager and a new IT professional position to assist that unit in supporting the entire department with their technological needs. We want to deploy additional software. We are tracking inventory for the department, use of force tracking and reporting. So having these additional positions will allow us to better support the department as a whole. E284 requests to upgrade our existing inventory software that the unit kind of brought over with them from Highway Patrol. We want to expand that to a web-based application so we can utilize that software to track the inventory for our entire department. E282 funds a departmental contract that provides for replacement, ongoing equipment support, cartridges, software support, and certification courses for all of our Taser energy weapons for the department. E249 funds the division's portion of a new location in Las Vegas. The department was directed to vacate our previously leased locations in Las Vegas and consolidate into a leased building procured by the Department of Administration. This new lease was approved by the Board of Examiners at the August 13th, 2024 meeting, and we are currently in the process of transitioning into this new location with funding provided by budget account 1301. The next series of requests are E900 decision units, which request the transfer of positions. E902 requests the transfer of the EEO position from budget account 4706 to 1363, which was submitted at the request of DHRM, who wants to centralize those positions statewide. E903 and E901 request to transfer positions from the Highway Patrol and the Records Division into the Research and Planning Unit within budget account 4706, as outlined in those organizational charts earlier in our presentation. The BPA positions will provide mobile data computer or MDC support and be a point of contact between OCIO, who provides our IT services, and the unit. E903 will provide clerical assistance to include ongoing inventory efforts, communicating and coordinating, and deploying equipment. And finally, E900 transfers 3 polygraphers from Highway Patrol to the background unit within 4706. These positions were reclassified from vacant DPS Officer 2 positions to polygraphers back in 2019 due to the need that the unit had, but there was insufficient staffing and funding within the director's office. But they have been serving the entire department, and we thought it was more appropriate to transfer them, therefore, into a cost-allocated budget. For equipment replacement, E710 requests to replace computer hardware and software, and E711 is replacing office chairs on a 7-year cycle. E283 funds an all-inclusive accountability system that is going to replace our current system that is utilized by our Office of Professional Responsibility, and it's also going to provide tracking for use of force, pursuits, vehicle damage. So there's a lot of different things that this new software is going to be able to do that the old one can't, and that's why we're centralizing it in the director's office and cost allocating it out. The existing system that OPR is using is really outdated and starting to fail, and we're trying to get ahead of that so we don't lose a lot of that historical critical data. And also upgrading provides us the opportunity to move into a cloud-based system because we're on old actual physical servers right now, and it would also enhance the security of the information. And finally, E289 is kind of a catch-all, but funds in-state travel, contracted background services, software, and uniform items to align the authority with the fiscal year 2024 actuals due to increased costs that exceeded the ledge-approved base amounts. And that concludes our presentation. I thank the chairs and committee for your time, and we welcome any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. You went through that concisely, but it's pretty thorough. We do have several questions up here from the committee. We will start with Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'm actually going to have us go back a little bit to a little bit of history, because I remember in the 2023 session that we kind of had some discussions about trying to do some changes to the research and planning technology team. And although you do have that slide on slide 7, kind of explaining what the different positions are, what is the department's long-term plan in developing that research and planning technology team?
Sherry Brigham for the record. Long term, I think we're very close to the finish of our plan. Most of our software services are specific to a particular vendor or a type. They're not statewide. And they can be as big as in CGIS modification, which you'll be hearing later on in the month, or as small as a couple of the items that Christy just mentioned. One of them, obviously, would be our coordination with the All-Stars team. let alone the new one that's going to take care of OPR. All of those are web-based and managed by the vendors and require no assistance from OCIO. And when we lost our IT department, we lost everyone who could advise us. So we just don't have the ability to quickly make decisions, turn right or turn left, ask for help or not ask for help. And so what this group of people has done that we have gathered together is kind of bridge that spot. So if it is an OCIO issue, they can go to them and then brief us on what our choices are or what we can do with it, because we're just not those kind of experts. We're, as the director would say, we're a law enforcement. So that's our plan, to be able to get enough people together so that they can help us make big decisions that usually cost a lot of money.
Thank you. May I have a follow-up? Oh, thank you. So just really quickly, could you define OPR again? Because my mind can't figure out what that would be.
Sherry Brigham for the record, Office of Professional Responsibility, and they do all the
Great.
Administrative investigations.
I was like, Office of Public Relations, Office of Police
Sorry.
Retention,
Thank you.
Recruitment. Thank you so much. So then, do you think that there will be any further resources that are necessary? I mean, it sounds like it's getting pretty close. You mentioned earlier about the cloud-based system security, but do you think that there's a possibility that there will be, or anticipate any further resources that will be necessary to meet these goals?
Sherry Brigham for the record, I'm going to turn that one over to Christy. I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure.
Christy Defer again for the record. So, as the deputy director said, I think we're really close. And as we had received some questions about this presentation prior to today, and the answer is that we want to add these positions and then kind of evaluate where we're at. And if there are further needs that we identify, then we will submit those requests in a future biennium. But I think that with these additional positions, I think that we're going to be a lot closer to where we need to be.
You're very welcome. Our next question, Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Chair, and I first want to thank you all for all that you do for our state. It's very helpful, and as I'm learning, I appreciate knowing all of this. My question is similar to my colleague. Can you discuss what specific services currently provided by the Office of the Chief Information Officer would be transitioned to the department?
Christy Defer again for the record. So it's a little complicated because OCIO provides our IT support, our desktop support. That is not going to change. Nobody's transferring from OCIO. That happened many sessions ago where those positions were transferred over to OCIO in an attempt to centralize that support over at their unit. But as the deputy director said, we really have a need because of our law enforcement specific software needs, technology needs, equipment, for a specialized unit to research those items and make decisions. And so to answer your question, that there won't be any transfer in between OCIO. This unit is kind of an intermediary, I guess, if you will, between OCIO and the department's needs.
Thank you so much. That makes sense, and I think you answered my second question, but I just want to make sure. So what you were saying about the specifics, that's why you've recommended these changes, because they're very specific to your office.
Christy Defer again for the record. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Senator Titus?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here today. I want to refer back to your presentation, and specifically on page 9. So, first, thank you for recognizing the need to go out and actually advocate for your department and encourage that you had so many more applications. I understand the $169 per folks is the cost per advertising. That's what but that's not even close to the cost of, if they do get accepted, the cost of the training, and that will be discussed, I'm sure, at some point, what the actual cost per training one of these great folks is. On page 9, however, I'm really concerned. in spite of the advertising, in spite of the applications, your vacancy rate is pretty alarming. And those folks that are out there on the highways. So your highway patrol, you've actually a dramatic worsening of your vacancy rate from 28% to 33%. Can you explain that? So this advertising hasn't really helped that, or you have been successful, it just takes time to train these. I know how long post takes, I understand that, but boy, that's a dramatic worsening.
Sherry Brigham for the record. Yes, it is. And we have found, I did say Sherry, okay. We have found that of the new applicants, the trend used to be, if I have a new officer, what's your pick? They want to go where the lights and sirens and the uniforms and that cool stuff. The people we're getting today, the younger generation, are looking for Monday through Friday, weekends off. And so parole and probation is actually benefiting right now. So they're doing rather well. They have reduced their vacancies. Highway Patrol, on the other hand, we have quite a bit of work to do. We have talked about, and it's again back to those salary surveys, that comprehensive issue, and apparently that's not going to be available to anybody for another year and a half. That makes a big difference. Another part of this is that a lot of the people who have retired and left are of that age, and that group of people have moved through the system and are retiring. A large portion of us are retiring, and our senior-most people have been in Highway Patrol up until this point. So we have been hiring and promoting, not nearly at the rate we need to be, but we're continuing to work towards that to try and target those areas. We've changed our advertising forum to give specific areas throughout the state showing the rules in specific cities, what you can do, and that's mostly for our Highway Patrol folks. We have one of our recruiters who's gone out to Elko or Winnemucca, I can't remember which one, and did a little event out there where she actually did hire somebody. So we're working on it, but it is just not as easy as it is, and it's a surprise to us as well, to fill the Highway Patrol positions as it is to fill the parole and probation positions.
Yeah, thank you for that. As you all know, I live in a rural area, and finding folks that were willing to go out to the rural areas is tough. I like the idea that you're reaching out. You know, if you grow them, that's the best part, right? So reaching out to individual communities, job fairs in the communities is important. My concern about some of the other budget issues you have is, and what I see is, are you doing any enhancements for the folks on the street as opposed to promoting folks into now training positions and taking them off the street? I just see it's a little top heavy for me and not enough incentive for those young folks to stay out there on the roads. Is there some program that way to incentivize them?
Pardon me, Sherry Brigham for the record. If you are referring to incentives, perhaps paid, there is nothing, and at this point, we have done everything we can without the funding we would be required to have to provide those. We have talked about or tried to get funding for rural areas or hard-to-fill areas. We've talked about doing a number of areas where we would have a team of our officers that would go out to these areas and stay there for weeks at a time and then come home, kind of like a mini fire department to support those areas. But the funding still is an issue. Salaries, we're competitive right now, but July, once the PERS numbers hits and the benefit numbers hit, I don't know that we'll be as competitive as we were. So without the funding to do incentives to stay, and the new pay scale may provide all of that because it will increase the top. But we don't know, that's way above my level, and unfortunately, control as well. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I just want to make sure that your officers are safe, and I worry about that vacancy rate, especially out in the rural areas where maybe even if you have an MOU with the local law enforcement, that there's not backup for these guys or gals. And so seeing that vacancy rate has me very alarmed. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. I do have a question myself, just back on the same topic that my colleague just asked. I was actually in a conversation with someone this week, and we were talking about how the difference in pay impacts your ability. You hit on that a little bit. But would you mind going in that direction a little bit more? How much are people, dragging your people, right? Hiring them, grabbing them, you know what I mean?
Sherry Brigham, for the record. We are not higher than anybody else right now. We're just not so far behind that it's a no-brainer to go somewhere else. I know my highway patrol folks and the colonel and the lieutenant colonel will probably tell you that we're everybody's last choice. And that may be true, because they can get offered higher rate of pays, higher incentive, higher holidays, longer vacations, longer comp times. They have everything on the books, and we can't offer our employees the same thing. And until we are right there and competitive, and our PERS is the biggest issue, because in most cases the counties are paying part or all of the PERS, we can't compete with that. And so we try to compete with personality and, just the name. That's kind of why you heard of the state police. It was trying to build the image up. And there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot we do. They deserve a lot of respect. But again, our hands are tied. Until we are comparable with the locals, we will never, ever be the first ones people come to look for a job.
Thank you, Ms. Briggerman. I appreciate that. Assemblymember Brown May?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. And just for the record, Deputy Director Briggerman, I'm very glad that you're not IT experts. I much prefer you focus on public safety, law enforcement, parole, probation, that. So we'll continue to work to support your IT. I do have a couple of questions, though, relative to the transfer of positions. I just want to make sure that we are really clear. Can you talk about the projected impact on the Records, Communications, Compliance Division, and Highway Patrol Division if the transfer of these 4 positions is approved?
Sherry Brigham, for the record. There will be no impact at all to Highway Patrol, because we have been using them in that position all along. That was the case. They had the vacancies that we could turn into these positions. We did not. And last biennium, there were no enhancements even considered, so they just got lost in the shuffle. With regard to RCCD, those positions became available as they progressed through their NCGIS mod. And they now have the final group of people they need to continue to maintain in CGIS mod, and you will hear quite a bit more about that as they present. So these positions are no longer needed by NCGIS mod, but we need them. So it seemed like an opportunity to move them on over to this group and team. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow-up, Chair. Thank you. So there are 6 positions that are proposed to be added to the Research and Planning and Technology team, right? How do they fit within the 3 existing groups that you have? You have Radio System Management, Operational Maintenance Technology, and Research and Planning Technology. How do they fit?
Sherry Brigham, for the record, I'm turning that one over to Christy. She actually supervises them right now because we don't have anybody in authority, and I think she knows it a little bit better than I do. Thank you.
Christy Defer, again for the record. So as the Deputy Director said, those positions, if you go to that org chart, they're already reflected in the org chart. They are, the transfer positions are already working within the unit. Some of them, a couple of them would be additional positions, but we see them performing administrative duties and trying to allow the higher level positions, the specialized positions, to be able to focus on those duties more. So that's the AA liaisons are kind of going to be in the administrative payroll, those types of positions to support the unit. We don't have a chief level, and so at this time, it's basically a business process analyst 3 that's supervising the whole unit and that's reporting directly to me. So we wanted to add that IT manager 1 as a chief position that would report directly to the director and deputy director, and really make it kind of its own unit that reports directly to the director. And so, and then there's those other IT positions that would, we wanted to have more of a liaison, as we discussed before, between this unit and OCIO to make sure that we're all working together, we're all on the same page. So coordinating that is a lot of the ask on that. And then they also additional equipment support. So I believe there's a lot riding on the shoulders of the people that are deploying equipment right now for body cameras and MDCs. And so being able to kind of split that amongst these additional positions would be a great help to us.
Thank you. Chair, one more. Thank you. Thank you kindly. So I heard you say a little bit about some of the additional services, like there's a liaison that will happen. Can you talk what additional services would be provided to the department by research and planning technical team as a result of these additional positions?
Christy Defer again for the record. So I don't know if it's additional things. I mean, it's things that the unit is already handling but doesn't have the proper staffing to really be able to support the entire department right now. So as I discussed, the unit kind of came over from other divisions previously. We didn't get additional positions, but they are intended to support the entire department. The projects, as the deputy director said, we have software that may not be deployed or built by OCIO, but there's an aspect of it that they would need to be maybe maintaining for us, and so there's a lot of coordination that has to happen, and I think that we can do a much better job of that than we have in the past, and really working with OCIO to make sure that we're all on the same sheet of music. So having these additional positions is just going to assist us in providing better support for the entire department.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Assemblymember Hickman?
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the time. I just quickly going back to the vacancy rate. I was curious what traffic safety is that seems to be, what falls under that? Because that vacancy rate is down as well.
Sherry Brigham, for the record. Excuse me. The traffic safety chief is here today to present her budget. Oh, okay. And she, I believe, has only 9 or 8 FTEs. It's a very small area because most of her positions are contract positions that are funded by grants. And so they don't show up properly, unfortunately. So
Okay.
one being gone is going to show.
A huge percentage.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Chair.
You're very welcome. Senator Nguyen?
Thank you. I'm going to kind of draw your attention back to some of the things that I know as a legislator. I'm sure everyone on this dais hears from constituents all the time about background checks. If the current timeline for pre-employment background checks is 3 weeks, what is the estimated timeline for a background check to be completed with one additional background investigation technician position?
Sherry Brigham, for the record, we were provided those numbers. I specifically remembered. Good. Okay, I'm missing. So I will read you what I have. The background unit experienced a significant increase in the number of investigation conducted between 23 and 24. Specifically, civilian increased from 272 in 2023 to 377 in 2024, reflecting a 38.6% growth. Sworn position cases increased from 462 in 2023 to 546 in 2024, representing 18.2% growth. The combined total workload rose from 734 cases in 2023 to 923 in 2024, marking an overall 25% increase in the unit's case volume. We believe a single background check person will assist. We will be able to keep up or at least maintain the time that it takes us to get through a background, which is approximately 3 weeks long.
So you don't anticipate it would speed up that background check at all? It would just maintain the 3-week average timeline?
Absolutely. I don't expect that we will improve. If we wanted improvement, which I do, we'd need more of them. Thank you.
So the addition, again, I just want to clarify, just keeps us at the status quo of 3 weeks, doesn't improve. It just makes sure that we don't fall to 4 weeks or 5 weeks.
That's correct.
Okay, I have another question. You had talked briefly about this during your presentation about the digital media specialist position. Can you, again, how do you see this new position or the addition of this specialist position increasing or enhancing public safety?
Sherry Brigham for the record. Again, on social media, you will probably see our Facebook. We're all over, and that's due to our PIO. The PIO uses video and pictures that she actually goes out and takes. Or she has a lot of friends in the field, PIOs from the divisions, and there are other people who will take pictures and send them to us. We use those photographs and videos in all of our presentations. Everything you see in here is from our PIOs or our people. And everything we do with All Stars is using our pictures and our people. We can't afford to send her all over the state and still have her handling all the media requests that we have to do. So we expect that this person is going to be able to actually go out, get the video. For instance, we kind of do snapshots of our academies as they go, and then we post them on our website so that we can show potential employees what it might be like to go through the academy, to at least get them prepared in their mind. Is this something you really want to do, or is this something that looks fun to you? So we do that a lot with everything, but we can't do as much as we'd like to do. And the more I can get in volume, because a video, for instance, if we videoed this, we would probably cut out dead time, go through, and just editing a video takes almost an hour per 5 minutes of video. Is that? There I am. I got that right. So this person would be really helpful to be able to fulfill that function for us.
Thank you. Chair, may I ask one other question about the one-shot budgets? Please go right ahead. Okay. Kind of switching back over to that other budget with regards to the one-shots. I know that we had approved some one-time money in IFC, and I believe that contract was just approved in December. So I fully recognize that we're only like 2 months into that contract, that started not even 2 months into that contract. I was wondering if you could provide a status update on the implementation of that recruitment campaign. And you kind of briefly talked about it, and when that funding for the campaign, obviously since it's only been approved for a little while, I know that in the governor's amended budget, it still remains a one-shot. Is this something that you anticipate that you will have success with this recruiting kind of process in the future? That would necessitate it being an ongoing cost that your department and your agency would constantly need, instead of having to come back to IFC and coming back for these work programs and getting one-shots. So if you can address that.
Sherry Brigham for the record. Yes. This particular program is still on trial. Personally, my experience tells me we are always going to need some form of marketing to fill these positions. I can't imagine how that could change in any way. On the other hand, I don't know that All Stars is the ultimate answer. So I can't say that we're ready to go on and put All Stars in our budget, but that amount of money is probably going to be needed on a regular basis to market for positions, if nothing else. So it's kind of a quasi thing, and it is new and still on trial, so we felt a one-shot might be more appropriate at this point.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair, for your indulgence.
Not a problem. We'll go back to Assemblymember Anderson. You have a couple questions?
I do. Thank you so much. So I feel like there just always seems to be more and more buildings that we seem to have to be, people are moving around. So from some of the background information and then also a little bit of the budget, it appears that you are moving. Was there a need that arose, or was that a directive? I guess I'm really confused by how that happened. And then also, are there any sort of budget accounts that are continuing to pay rent for buildings with this new Bermuda area, which I gotta tell you, what a horrible name for a street for a police area to be on, especially if it's gonna have evidence at one point. But that's a side note. So if you could please kind of go through that process for us.
Sherry Brigman for the record. I probably cannot go through the process. We were not involved. This was handled at a higher level than we were involved with. As it was explained to me, NDOT needed a home because they didn't have the funding to build a building. And how the FAST building became theirs when it was specifically built for highway patrol is, again, I don't have an answer for that. But it needed to be done, and we are doing the best we can with whatever we are given. The difficulty with the rent is, yes, we already had two existing rental agreements, and the understanding we have is that B&G are trying to find someone to backfill those leases. The leases, in one case, are quite lengthy, so and included TIs, so that would be our training division lease. It would be costly, and we could be, well, they threatened to sue us if we try and back out of that lease. So we're not sure how this is going to happen. So the best solution is for them to backfill those leases. And if that is done, then we'll be left with the lease on the new building.
A follow-up, if I may. So I want to make sure I've got this right. There's a lease that was agreed to from the state to, our state was the one that entered into it, for two different buildings. It was for a long term, so longer than just a few more months. You were told at one point, that's not going to work out. Your department has to move without you asking for this. You were directed to move, and now there's a possibility that the state is now going to have to worry about this lease agreement that was agreed to earlier. Is that what I'm understanding for this process?
Sherry Brigman for the record. Before I confirm that, I would ask that Curtis Palmer join us at the table from the governor's office. I don't want to mislead anybody.
Thank you for that.
Welcome, Mr. Palmer. Please go ahead and address the Assembly member's question.
Well, good morning. Happy Valentine's Day. I am Curtis Palmer. I am the Deputy Director for the Governor's Finance Office. The information that Deputy Director Bergerman has given is accurate to my understanding. There was not a request on the part of DPS to move, but rather a need arose within NDOT, and working with the Governor's office, some decisions were made. I can't speak to how or any of the details of that decision making. But I do know that there is some concern with the existing leases, which Buildings and Grounds is trying to work with and deal through and work with as far as that goes. So there was a larger need, I guess, is the answer within the state that was trying to be solved.
Thank you. May I continue on?
I can tell you need to.
Thank you. Is this partnership with NDOT occurred in the past where there was a need within NDOT, so it has impacted this area as well, or is this something new? I'm really trying to wrap my head around how this process happened.
Sherry Brigman for the record. Back in 2000-ish, there was an agreement, or there was a approval to build with highway funds the FAST building that was Highway Patrol's Southern Command headquarters. They were in process of building this building when they got to a point and needed more funds. At that point, they enlisted the aid of FAST, which is a segment of NDOT, my understanding, and to contribute funding. And the understanding was at the end of the build, both entities, FAST and Highway Patrol, would share the operating expenses. NDOT has all along managed those expenses, and they give us our fair share of expense quarterly or annually based on square footage. So FAST occupies X amount, they get X amount of the cost, Highway Patrol, et cetera, et cetera. So that has been a long-standing understanding, and the rates have been going through just the cost of the building all this time. Unfortunately, that is all I can give you.
And I appreciate, thank you, Chair, for, I think I might need a graphic organizer at some point of this flow chart. I'm just going to say that I'm very concerned about a possible lease agreement and that will then be impacting your budget from something that you have been told that you must do, in addition to another rental fee that you must pay. Am I understanding that correctly in your budget at this time? You have a lease agreement, and you also have the rental of the new area. We'll just call it the Bermuda Triangle at this time.
Christy Defer again for the record. So the ongoing leases that we were discussing for the training division at Renaissance Drive, and actually the Office of Professional Responsibility had a little piece of that as well. And then investigations that was on Flamingo, those leases are still in effect, and they are not included in our base budgets, with the anticipation that we will try to figure something out either by finding another agency, B&G finding another agency to take over those spaces, or buying out those leases. But that is what I'm being told from other agencies, and so I can't provide any other additional information about what the plan is moving forward. But yes, those leases are still in effect for public safety.
Thank you. I do have one last question, and then one last, thank you. When the evidence vault, because the evidence vault is not over there yet, are there any cost estimates available related to what needs to happen to bring the evidence vault into this new area that you've been directed, not necessarily a choice, to make?
Christy Defer again for the record. I don't have those in front of me, but I do have them, and I would be happy to provide the committee with those numbers. It would take a significant build out of the new Bermuda space to accommodate the evidence vault. And so until we can secure that funding and figure out what that looks like, the evidence vault is kind of on an island over at the FAST building, separated from the other, the Highway Patrol at Bermuda. So I know that we are actively working to try to figure out a solution to that, but yes, there would be a significant cost to that move.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering if when the other entity is brought forward, I don't think the group that told you need to move is actually in front of our committee, but it'd be great if it was, if we could ask that question. Thank you, Chair, for this much time. I'm sure I'd like to talk with you guys a little bit more offline.
Thank you, Assembly Member. And if you would, the information that the Assembly Member asked for, just give it to the committee secretary, and then she'll make sure that the entire committee gets, just in terms of just our wrap-ups. So you moved to a building that wasn't large enough for everything that you needed.
Christy Defer again for the record. So without the tenant improvements, that is correct. So there is build out that needs to happen at that new building in order for it to accommodate our needs. Because the FAST building, as the deputy director said, was built specifically for our needs. And we're kind of moving into a building that's already existing and trying to make it fit for our department. So without those tenant improvements, no.
Understandable. Thank you very much. Any other questions before we move on to the next budget? No, I think that is it. We've had plenty up here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, for your presentation, and for answering all the questions. Okay. I believe budget 3775, the training division, is next. Please go ahead, state your name for the record, and begin when you're ready.
James Simpson, for the record. I'm a major with the.
Is your microphone on, please, sir?
Yes.
Okay. We just can't hear it very well. That's okay. It'll be okay. Thank you.
James Simpson, for the record. SIMPSON. I'm a major with the Nevada State Police at the training division. I want to start with the mission of the training division is to facilitate progressive, effective training in basic law enforcement, continuing education, career growth and development of the Department of Public Safety employees utilizing professional and ethical methodology. Up on the screen, you can see our organizational chart. Those in red are the positions we're hoping to have brought to us during this session. That include a major, a training officer in Las Vegas, and 2 sergeants to facilitate our in-service and professional development of our statewide staff. Some of the accomplishments we have an academy in Las Vegas and in Carson City. And in the past 2 fiscal years since the start of last session, we've graduated 69 cadets. The training division oversees the sworn recruiters that Director Bergman spoke about earlier, as well as a statewide firearms coordinator for the Department of Public Safety, to centralize our training so we get good, consistent training throughout the state. And also our staff in Las Vegas help out often teaching EVOC, which is our motor vehicle driving, and SFSTs, which is field sobriety testing, to other law enforcement agencies in those areas. Our in-service and professional development, honestly, our goal is to bolster those. Right now, in service, we do block training for all the sworn officers in the Highway Patrol, Parole and Probation, OPR, which is like our internal affairs, Capitol Police, and fire marshals. We also instruct first-line supervisors. We instruct that in the north and the south, and that does go statewide, so that other local agencies as well as our own can have first trained up supervisors who are sergeant level, or those who want to become sergeants, to see if it's something that they want to do. It's a really good class. Basic instructive and development is so that people can actually get up and speak or instruct classes. We like to be organic with what we teach. It costs a lot of money to have outside instructors come talk to us. If we can do the best we can do to get ingrown or in-house instructors, that's a win. Also, verbal judo, we've taught 248 people in the past couple of years. That's through our cadets and outside, and that's for like de-escalation. If I can talk to you and talk you in a nice way to get you to do something that you shouldn't do, that's a win for everybody. It saves the state. It's a huge risk management. Some of the accomplishments, as I mentioned, we do the block training for the state, since we've taken that, for the Highway Patrol, or the DPS, sorry. And with that, it used to be, we would have mandatory training, you have to finish it by a certain date. You'd always have stragglers. And we're trying to minimize that. So we used to do 12 extra classes a year. Now we're only doing 1. It's about 2% deficiency. We're trying to get that to be 100% by our deadline. And that's for efficiency. We also, as I mentioned, the basic instructor development. We have 2 new master instructors and a number of intermediate throughout the DPS, so we can train our own people. And in addition to that, the training division has also partnered with the UNLV in recent years to have our cadets who graduate the academy get up to 9 course credits or credit for 3 classes upon graduating. And that's, I think, an educated force is a really good force to have. Some of our goals moving forward is human trafficking is a problem within our state. In Nevada, we have F1, we've had the Super Bowl, we have huge concerts, conventions. and EDC and all these other things. And human trafficking, people, they're not flying in, they're driving on our highways to get here. It's not just sex trafficking, it's also forced labor. If we can educate and be the focal point for the entire state to educate law enforcement statewide on what to look for, we can hopefully put a big dent in that. And that's something we hope to do through partnerships with the universities as well as the Las Vegas Convention Visitor Center in the future. Our numbers for graduating our cadets, they're not quite where we want them to be. 3 years ago it was 67%, in 2023 it was 74%, and last year was 54%. Our goal is 80%. I do believe we can touch that goal. Those are numbers in the past. And our post mandates, as I discussed that, we want to be at 100%. We're hitting, everybody is getting trained, but not everybody's getting trained in time. So we had 98, 96, 98, and our goal is 100%, which I do believe we can do. And we're going to touch upon that again in some of our one-shots with management, learning management systems. Reasons people are leaving the academy. The sheets you have, there was an error. We fixed that on the screen. So in 2022, which was during the last session, we had 5 leave for resignation. Those are personal reasons. Most of those reasons are due to pay and benefits, as well as family members or family reasons that maybe this isn't what they want to do. We've done a real good job at minimizing academic failures by working with our cadets, not just trying to get rid of them, but trying to teach them along the way and giving second chances to allow them. We've invested a lot of time and money into these cadets. The divisions want them, and it's our duty to try to get the best product out there. And with enhancements, E249, this goes in lines with Assembly Member Anderson's questions. This request is funding for a new location in Las Vegas. E275, this request is for 1 new DPS major position. The Department of Public Safety Training Division is mandated by NRS 480-140 subsection 7 to provide training to DPS employees. There's need from the department to streamline training practices throughout the state. E276, this request adds a new training officer to the Southern Command Office. The training division has 2 separate academies, one located in Las Vegas and the other located in Carson City. There's a need for additional support within the training division. The duties of the training officer continue to grow and more closely coincide with policy and NRS. With increased workload, there's a need for additional staff. And this is in line with our professional development, which at the end of the day, the better trained we are, the lower the risk is to the state. E278 requests funds the creation of a central repository for all employee training information, including compliance with training, professional development opportunities for employees, department training workflows. This includes initial setup and the ongoing yearly costs. Currently, everything we have is either on our S drive, the hard drive, or in paper binders. If I were to ask the training officer for records, she has to go in there and actually find them. It'd be nice to have a central repository where we can handle all training, whether it be to pull the records, to create classes, to have testing, print certificates, and track their training throughout their career. E904 and 905 go hand in hand. Right now at the training division, we have 4 NHP and 4 PMP employees assigned as corporals. They train the cadets. We want to take them and send them back to their home divisions, and they'll be TDY to the training division. So that would affect budgets 3740 and 4713 respectively. There's no cost to each division. It's just for ease and consistency, and we can discuss that if you have questions on that after. 277 is the request for 2 additional sergeants, one in the north and one in the south. The training division has 2 separate academies, one located in the north and one in the south. The additional leadership support, and they would also oversee the professional development and work with the in-service training aspects. For our one-shots, E710, this request replaces computer hardware and software per the OCIO, the recommendations. E711, this request funds replacement of the dormitory beds and mattresses. The division requests to replace 4 beds for fiscal year. Currently, they have steel cots that were made before I came on in the early 2000s, and the mattresses are the green hard plastic rubber ones, so if they roll over, they wake their roommate up. they're really outdated, and this is a step in the right direction so they can feel kind of human when they're we're trying to get officers. E712, this requests the replacement of handguns for the DPS training officers. Currently, our handguns are anywhere between 17 and 12 years old in the training division, and they're at end of life. E730 requests funds critical and necessary building maintenance projects at the DPS training facility in Carson City to include HVAC, roof issues, the security in the front office, and the access control system. They're all outdated, and our front lobby security is actually plexiglass that it's not security at all. Then E731, this funds janitorial landscaping services for the DPS training facility in Carson City, which currently we have no funds for that, so we have staff or cadets cleaning the buildings and mowing the lawns. And shoveling snow. We have no snow service, so luckily yesterday they... Oh, and I'd also like to introduce, I never even looked at the other TV. Sorry, Captain Stunkel. He's our captain with the training division, and he has dedicated the past 5 years to training, and in a few months he's going to on better pastures. So I'd like to thank you for your service publicly. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. Do you have any questions? Please.
All right, Officer, thank you so much for your presentation. We do have a few questions, and so I'm going to start with Assembly Member Mosca.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for all that you do. And this was very helpful to understand your department and all of your, all that is under you. So thank you. And so my question is really, it was on both your slide 3 and 9. You kind of touched on it, but if you could just explain more the need for a new DPS manager position as opposed to reclassifying the DPS captain position to a DPS major position.
Okay. With that, the training division continues to grow, and the department is necessary to have the leadership in place for that division. By having both a major and a captain, the major would be in Carson City overseeing, and the captain would be in Vegas under the major, but also overseeing that large area. Most of our cadets are in the southern part of the state as well. Per policy, the training in NRS, the training division is not only responsible for the training of cadets, but continuing education. And as I mentioned earlier, our continuing education needs to be better. We have to work on professional development, which will make our current employees, whether they're sworn or civilian, not only just sergeants or management analysts twos, but to be the informal leader, so that we have people on the road someone can look up to, somebody in the office you can go to a question for. And those, again, our biggest job is to minimize risk to the state of Nevada and those coming through. So right now there are 640 sworn employees, 648 civilians within the DPS. By having this command structure, it helps facilitate the management of training. And in reality, if you were to have a captain telling a colonel or a chief, we need to do this, I think having the major at that level, it's easier to have the balanced or the level playing field.
And thank you, Chair. And that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
And also, as a major, it's the last stop before you get to go into a classified position. We want to have consistency within the training division. We don't want to have the revolving door of having someone possibly promote out. So in order to have that, if you have a captain, they're gonna, a good captain, if there's timing and positions and everything, they could promote out. This is like a final stop unless you are made that high a level. So it gives it sound structure. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Now we'll go to Assembly Member Brown May.
Thank you, Chair. With your permission, I have 3 questions. 3.
Go right ahead.
Thank you so much. First, I'm going to say you make me feel at home always. I love the accent. And
I
the
just
verbal-
watched The Departed. It's all fake.
Thank you. I miss home, but this is home. I've been here 30 years. Verbal judo, new terminology. Nice. We're gonna take the verbal judo. I like that much better than hand to hand. Right? Yes, we're gonna use that in classrooms. If you don't mind, can you talk about the additional training officer position and how would that ensure training needs are met for the non-sworn staff?
James Simpson for the record. The training officer would be in Las Vegas. And with that, currently we have 1 training officer in Carson City, and the duty she has should be a lot more than it is. But we're doing records and stuff without a records management system for about 1,000 people if we're fully staffed. And their job is to develop curriculum, teach classes, and they're not keeping up on that because we're bombarded with other stuff. Like I said, to go back in 2010, 2009, I transferred to the training division under the role of being the sergeant for professional development, and that stopped right away because we didn't have the funds to. We've been pushing for professional development of our employees for a minimum of 16 years now. We need to do more than just train our basic cadets. We need to make leaders within our house, and that whether it be more than just first line supervisor training, if we can get tactical supervision so the sergeants and lieutenants can make good decisions on the road. If we can bring classes from state admin to our civilian force for better leadership. We have a problem, so statewide, we train people and other people take them. If we can invest in our employees and they feel like we invest in them and we mean it, they might stick around, and that's really important to me. And I think to everybody here and you guys as well, whoops. But no, it would create, so we have Las Vegas in the north. The state is one state, but we do have a geographic footprint in each area. It would allow that area to have that, so it's managed out of there, to bring classes there, to eventually instruct the classes down there. So that's, the cost of flying people up here and per diem and all that is astronomical. This would actually, I think, be a huge savings at the end of the day.
Thank you. Major, I appreciate that. Can you talk about what specific training gaps currently exist within the Department of Public Safety that the 2 new DPS sergeant positions would address?
James Simpson for the record. The 2 new positions would focus more on the in-service and the professional development side of the world. Currently, we have 2 sergeants that one runs the academy in the north, one runs the academy in the south, and that is a full-time plus job. By having the training officers, one in the north and one in the south, they could oversee the in-service training that the training division took on. Years past, each division did their own training. NHP did NHP, PMP did PMP. We're trying to integrate it because we're one force multiplier. If I know someone I'm working with and I train with them, we have the same tactics and the same mindset. That goes a long way. So we've been doing it, and it's been taxing. It's crazy on some of the staff, but if we can have it like we all train together. We do block training. We have our range, DTs, all the state mandates, verbal judo, and that you actually have to speak. It's not, you can't just say verbal judo and not do it. You have to actually follow it. But you have, all these, they can coordinate it, ensure it's being done properly. You have oversight. So if we were to have a training class and we say, here's a scenario, and we want it to go a certain way, whether there's times when officers go hands-on, so we may have a hands-on scenario. We may have a scenario with strictly verbal. The sergeant would ensure that these scenarios are going that way and it's within what we want, so nobody goes off the wrong path. And again, I will stress professional development until I retire in 5 more years. They can oversee that and ensure it happens. Welcome.
Thank you, Major. I appreciate that. My youngest is 22. He's currently in Police Academy, although in North Carolina, I couldn't get him to stay here in Nevada. So I appreciate the investment in training for our officers, right? Understanding as a mom of a future officer, he doesn't really know anything about real life because he's 22. And so the training is really important, I think, for our officers to be able to make informed decisions. But with that, I do have one more question.
Okay.
Would the use of a DPS officer on temporary assignment from another division to perform training duties in the training division result in a loss of experience, do you think, or knowledge associated with a permanent training officer?
I want to say, first of all, if your son wants to lateral to Nevada, we do take lateral, so I'm putting that up there right now. I do believe that time as a corporal is not a lifetime job. You need relevant experience. We put somebody in a corporal role, fresh off of parole and probation, fire marshals, or NHP, they're there for about 2 years, 2.5, 3 years. Then it's time to go back on the road. Our job, our knowledge is perishable, our experiences change, case law changes. So what we do on the road, our tactics change. So you want to have a fresh person in that role. And with this also, currently, we've had a difficult time getting corporals to come over to us because they're in the training division. We don't have an overtime budget. We have a flat budget. They come over, their peers who they've worked with for years have a take-home car. They have overtime. They get holiday pay. The benefits of the job, the troopers, probation officers and such, they may work weekends and work nights, but you have the benefits that they have. The training division, they lose all those benefits. So this allows them to still retain that. But like going back to what you said though, time in, time out, you can't be in, it's not a teacher's role forever. You have to have relevant experience. So we do need the ability to have them rotate in and out. Welcome.
You bet. Thank you so much, Major.
Thank you.
Senator Nguyen?
Thank you. I have a pretty quick question. It's mostly about, you had talked about the training division and you talked about people taking their equipment kind of with them, I guess. And I guess my question is to just clarify whether the divisions of Highway Patrol and Parole and Probation would be able to provide the necessary equipment and voluntary overtime to the 8 transferred positions without additional resources.
James Simpson for the record. If they were to stay with their, if we transfer these spots back to the divisions, they can retain all their items and then come back and teach for us and instruct for us and lead the cadets as corporals. It would be a TDY position.
You know what? I didn't state that very clearly.
I heard it, but I think I...
Let me back up a little bit. I guess my question has to do with this. In the executive budget, there's no additional funding for overtime or equipment costs. It's not recommended in these positions in the Nevada Highway Patrol Division or the Division of Parole and Probation budget accounts. And so it's kind of unclear to me whether or not there is excess equipment or overtime authority available in those base budgets for those 8 positions recommended to be transferred. Is that a little bit more clarity? Sorry, sometimes I forget we're in a budget committee here, so that's my budget question.
Not a hearing?
Yes.
This is Christy Defer again for the record, and I might be able to answer that from a fiscal standpoint. Those are 2 very large divisions, and we anticipate that, as the Major said, they are already TDYing as we speak. This is just kind of making that official and giving those divisions, those PCNs specifically. And I think I understand your question. I believe that they're big enough that they can absorb those additional positions and the overtime costs. A lot of the overtime that is done by the divisions is grant funded. So, and there are vacancies. And so I think with all of that, I don't think that there's going to be an additional need for any additional equipment or vehicles, if that's the question.
Or even overtime authority.
No, yeah, I think that this is already, sort of a practice that's happening, and this is just kind of official, making that process of that transfer official.
Sherry Brigham for the record, if I might add, it has been a practice or a policy of the state not to budget overtime. And that has gotten more and more strict as the years have gone by. So for the training division, any of the employees there are pretty much forced to take comp time. And then at the end of the academy, they're pushed to use that comp time up so that we don't have a huge payment at the end of the fiscal year. So it is a balancing ground. We do use P&P and Highway Patrol, normally return significant funds out of Cat 1 back into the funds at the end of the year. So we're confident that we will be able to fully fund these positions without impacting P&P or Highway Patrol's operations. But it further allows them on their weekends to participate in overtime events for Highway Patrol or P&P, so that these people can still earn those items on their weekends away from the training division and get the overtime from the grants or from the general public if it's one of those type of overtime assignments. So there will be no impact on the divisions. There's definitely a positive impact to be able to move an employee from A to B without going through a recruitment or step-by-step disciplinary action isn't something we want to do, but it's very, very important that we have the very, very right people in our training academy because that's where the attitudes start. So as
Thank you,
long
Ms.
as we can
Briggerman.
move it back.
I think we've gotten it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Because this is not policy. It's not a hearing. It's financial. So I know you want to make the case and you're passionate about it, and I certainly understand that. Senator Titus, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm still a little confused about these positions that you're asking for, and I'm worried that you're displacing folks that are on the road now into training. I'm seeing, again, back to my page 9 from the original presentation, you have 0% vacancy in the training division. But yet now you're having this, and again, I mentioned it earlier that I'm concerned about this top-heavy organization, more majors, not maybe majors, but sergeants and captains, but yet we're taking now these folks, patrol folks, off and putting them in training. We have 0%. You're going to do lateral transfers, so now you're going to have an increasing void in your people on the highways. I worry about not only public safety, but a safety for your officers. And so I think I need to understand, and you said, oh yeah, for the training, I don't see where the overtime, you have a training position, you're training these folks in post. I understand all that. I have family members that went through post. Where the overtime issues are, don't have to schedule overtime. Is the overtime a carrot that you're giving to your folks that they can make a little bit more money in the overtime? Is that what we're looking at here?
James Simpson for the record. Many times in the training division, I was a sergeant years ago there, and the overtime or comp times earned at teaching classes that go later. The academy is not just Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 with an hour lunch break. Many times we have them come on early for other testing or other scenarios. We've done a lot of scenarios to try to get scenario-based training into our cadets, and sometimes the days go past 5 o'clock. With the positions we're getting, since day one, we've always had positions from the other divisions, so we're not taking from them. We don't hire on the outside. We're not going to hire a person through a want ad in the New York Times saying, come teach for us. We get our teaching staff from the division, so they'd be coming to us no matter how you look at it. And what we are willing to do, we've actually talked yesterday with the colonel, like during a snow day, if they're not teaching, put them out on the road.
Well, I was recently at a graduation, and there were people from Highway Patrol in that. So you share post, is this a separate then training that they do after they finish post trainings, or how does that, none of your folks do post anymore?
We have our own academy. DPS, the training division, trains all DPS employees, all sworn. Post is separate from us.
Okay. I still feel it's really a top-heavy program. Thank you. And I'm really worried about our officer safeties on the road.
I am too.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, any more questions on this budget? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. And if you have another budget to present? No, that's it for you? Okay.
Thank you,
All right,
Chair.
thank you, Major. We're going to go on to Budget 4713, the Highway Patrol, and if you have more than one, we'll do all of those together. I am concerned that we're going to start losing committee members, so I'm just going to ask you to be concise on your responses, if you would, so we can make sure that we get a chance to hear everything all the committee members can hear. Thank you so much for being here. You go ahead and get started when you're ready. Don't forget to state your name for the record.
Thank you.
All right.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Joint Committee. I'm Colonel Patrick Conmay, C-O-N-M-A-Y, with the Department of Public Safety, proudly serving as the Chief of the Nevada Highway Patrol. Joining me is Lieutenant Colonel Martin Malesko, along with Administrative Services Officers Jennifer Ramos and Denny Goteri. I think Denny's hanging out in the back. We're also supported by key members of our team, both here and in Las Vegas, ready to assist with any questions. Today, we'll walk you through who we are, the challenges we face, and why legislative support is critical to safeguarding Nevada's future. Chair, with your permission, we would like to combine the presentations for Budget Account 4713 and 4721.
Music to my ears.
We're going to talk, I think, about some things that have been talked about previously in our presentation. So Lieutenant Colonel Malesko will provide the bulk of this presentation, and he'll move it along for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Malesko.
Please go right ahead. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Lieutenant Colonel Martin Malesko, M-L-E-C-Z-K-O. It is common spelling, just in case you're wondering. But thank you for joining us today. This year, we mark 75 years of service since the Nevada Highway Patrol was founded. For 7.5 decades, our troopers have stood watch over Nevada's highways, responding to crashes, pulling families from wreckage, stopping impaired drivers before tragedy strikes, and delivering life-altering news when it couldn't be prevented. This isn't just a job, it's a calling. Every trooper carries the weight of the lives they've saved and those they couldn't. And yet, despite the heartbreak, our mission remains unchanged to prevent the next tragedy. But today's challenges are different. The roads are faster, the distractions greater, and the risks are deadlier. Next slide. Since 1949, the Nevada Highway Patrol has operated under Chapter 480 of the Nevada Revised Statutes, which defines our mission: to protect lives through traffic safety enforcement, to investigate crashes to prevent future ones, to regulate commercial vehicle operations, and to disrupt crime on our roadways. We started with just 10 troopers covering only rural Nevada. Today, we're responsible for 392 troopers across 34 offices statewide, covering more than 100,000 lane miles, a network large enough to circle the earth 4 times. As Nevada grows, so does the risk. Over the past decade, fatal crashes have increased 37%. These aren't just numbers, they represent names, families, and preventable tragedies. To be solution-driven, we have updated our strategic plan, which focuses on modernizing our approach, investing in technology and training, and ensuring our members have all of the resources needed to serve at their best and to save lives. Next slide. At the heart of the Nevada Highway Patrol is a simple yet powerful promise. We will do everything we can to ensure Nevadans make it home safely. We are not just traffic cops, we are lifesavers. Every mile we patrol, every stop we make, every decision we face carries one mission, and that's to save lives. We serve with urgency and precision, because a single second can be the difference between life and death, and because the right action at the right time can prevent a crash that never makes the headlines, but changes a family's future forever. Standing still is not an option. Proactive solutions saves lives. Our mission just isn't about today. It's about building a safer future for every Nevadan. Next slide. To carry out our mission, the Nevada Highway Patrol operates under 3 core budget accounts. Budget 4713, which funds our primary operations. Budget account 4721, which funds our commercial enforcement and safety programs. And budget account 4705, which funds our specialized operations. While our budget is divided, our focus is singular: saving lives. High visibility enforcement and crash prevention in part aims at targeting impaired driving and speeding. Commercial vehicle oversight ensures safety compliance to help prevent catastrophic crashes. And specialized operations supports combating human trafficking and criminal interdiction. To protect Nevada's future, we must be positioned strategically and geographically to act before tragedy strikes. Everything we do is driven by 3 strategic priorities: reducing roadway deaths. Simply put, every life matters, and we are focused on proactive measures. Enhancing public trust. Trust isn't given, it's earned through transparency, accountability, and consistent service. And improving operational efficiency. Maximizing impact with the resources we do have and using technology and data to keep Nevada safe. These aren't just goals, they are commitments to the people of Nevada. We are purpose-driven, people-powered, and focused on results. Next slide. Traffic safety is built on 3 pillars: education, enforcement, and engineering. Education. Every crash has a story. We're improving our use of data to create targeted public awareness campaigns and to deliver critical safety messages through community outreach and across digital platforms. Enforcement. We focus on the fatal 5 behaviors, which include impaired driving, hazardous crash-causing violations, speeding, distracted driving, and seatbelts. Engineering. We continue to work with our partners statewide on a year-round basis to improve road design and safety. Prevention starts with the presence on the roads, in the communities, and through smart infrastructure. With continued support, we can make Nevada's roads safer for all. We measure progress through the mileage death rate, or known as the MDR, which is the number of lives lost per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, as defined by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA. As observed in the chart, Nevada's fatality rates have often exceeded the national average. Our work is far from being done. We must strengthen our efforts to save lives and address the crisis on Nevada's roadways. Nevada's MDR rose from 1.26 in 2022 to 1.34 in 2023, with a projected increase to 1.40 in 2024. continuing the upward trend. Primary contributing factors continue to be speeding, impairment, distracted driving, and occupant restraint. Between 2017 and 2022, Nevada's fatalities rose 35%, outpacing the 15% national increase. This is more than a statistic. Every number represents a name, a family, and a future lost. The challenge is growing, and so must our efforts. We're leveraging data-driven strategies, targeted enforcement, and community engagement to help reverse this trend. However, we must all intensify our efforts, because behind every number is a life that could have been saved. Nevada's highways are critical arteries for commerce, but with growth comes risk. Commercial vehicles account for a relatively small amount of all traffic crashes in Nevada, but with disproportionately severe impacts due to size and cargo. In 2024, we investigated 29 fatal commercial vehicle crashes. This is a 52% increase from 2020. These crashes often cause major road closures, delaying emergency response, and disrupting interstate commerce. Commercial growth is also accelerating. According to FMCSA, Nevada has seen a 52% increase in registered carriers and a 31% rise in drivers since 2019. Our commercial operations and motor carrier safety teams ensure that commerce doesn't come at the expense of safety through rigorous inspections, real-time monitoring, and targeted enforcement. On average, our troopers drive over 24,000 miles each year in some of the most extreme conditions across the country. There is nothing they do not experience. In these conditions, fleet reliability isn't just a priority, it's a lifeline. Since 2015, we have worked tirelessly to improve our on-time maintenance from an initial performance goal of 85% in 2015 to a current 91.3%. This success is no accident. It's a result of proactive maintenance, strategic investments, and a relentless commitment to safety. Per the CDC, traffic crashes are the leading causes of preventable deaths, with over 120 per day, resulting in a loss of $470 billion. Since our last presentation in 2023, 798 people lost their lives in Nevada's roads. The map on your left is just last year alone and the location of each tragedy we investigated. The chart on your right shows year over year since 2014, a 42% increase in 10 years and over 3,800 fatalities later. These numbers exceed the combined capacity of many of our Nevada schools, highlighting the scale of this public health crisis and the need to act. This crisis just isn't on our roads, it's within our ranks too. And Senator Titus, just to address some of your concerns, our team was able to quickly pull some numbers for you. There are 169 trooper positions vacant out of an authorized 392. This is a 43% vacancy rate statewide. Fewer troopers mean slower response times, fewer impaired drivers stopped, faster speeds, deadlier crashes, and more dangerous roads for everyone. Nevada is growing, tourism is booming, but without safety, growth loses its meaning. A UNLV resource allocation study recently found that when a trooper cannot respond within 30 minutes, a crash fatality risk rises significantly. In some areas, help may be an hour or more away, if it's coming at all. Every empty position widens the gap between crisis and care. We're committed to reversing this trend, but we need the resources and the help to do it. I'll now turn the presentation over to our Administrative Service Officer, Jennifer Ramos, to review some of our budget enhancements.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Jennifer Ramos, the Administrative Services Officer 3 for the Nevada Highway Patrol. I will be presenting our budgetary enhancements.
Ms. Ramos, is your microphone on? Okay, please go ahead. Thank you.
Did you need me to repeat any of that?
Oh, no, we're okay. I think we're good. Go ahead. Okay. Thank you.
E249, this request funds a new building location in Las Vegas. E276, this request funds a dedicated tow program manager. E277, this request funds an additional staff member for the Ignition Interlock program. E279, This request funds additional cell phone lines for all sworn positions to improve redundancy and communication. E280. This request funds the integration of the existing AssetWorks application into the Fleet Telematics cloud system. E281. This request funds OnSolve Code Red, an emergency notification system providing rapid mass notifications during emergencies. E282. This request funds the expansion of the training category to focus on development and performance. E283. This request funds additional uniform items, including external vest carriers, external vest polo shirts, traffic safety vests, and other accessories not included in previous budgetary requests. E284. This request funds increases to various operating line items due to increased usage or costs above base levels. E290. This request funds an increase to the division's dignitary protection category for the cost of providing protective services to traveling dignitaries. E292. This request funds collision forensic solutions software renewals required to operate existing forensic mapping equipment utilized by an NHP traffic homicide unit. E302. This request funds the continuation of a wellness program that was partially funded by a federal grant in fiscal year 2025. E305. This request funds annual wellness visits for sworn staff as mandated by statute. This enhancement utilizes an existing department-wide contract for psychological first aid. E713. This request replaces computer hardware and associated software per the Office of the Chief Information Officer's recommended replacement schedule. E716. This request funds the replacement of end-of-life Adobe Pro and Microsoft Visio licenses with the new ongoing monthly subscription model. E725. This request funds the purchase of a second modem and an associated subscriber identity module, SIM, line for integration into NHP rural area patrol vehicles with the intent to mitigate connectivity issues. E710. This request funds replacement vehicles which are expected to reach their mileage thresholds and their associated special equipment. E711. This request funds replacement motorcycles which are expected to reach their mileage threshold and their associated special equipment. E712. This request funds the replacement of mobile data computers per the replacement schedule and associated citation printers that have reached their end-of-life schedule. E714. This request funds the replacement of portable radios and associated radar certification equipment that have reached their end-of-life schedule. E715. This request funds the replacement of vehicle hoists for in-house automotive garages and an obsolete forklift. This request also replaces 2 vehicle trailers that have reached their end-of-life schedule. E717. This request funds the replacement of current drones to comply with Senate Bill 11. It also funds the replacement of scales needed to enforce overweight commercial motor vehicles as required by NRS and federal regulations. E718. This request funds the replacement of body-worn cameras in accordance with the replacement schedule and NRS. E721. This request funds the replacement of end-of-life first aid kits that are issued to all sworn members. E722. This request funds the purchase of LED sequential flares. E723. This request funds the purchase of red dot optics and associated ammunition. E724. This request funds 3 outside storage containers for storing toxic evidence, such as marijuana laced with hazardous substances to limit employee exposure. E277. This request funds 6 additional commercial vehicle safety inspector positions and associated equipment for budget account 4721. E278, this request funds DriveWise Smart Roadways, a virtual sign network with direct access to message truck drivers and proactive, targeted in-cab alerts that result in safer and more efficient freight travel. E279, this request funds one new vehicle lease. And then E710, this request funds the replacement of computer hardware and associated software per the replacement schedule. It also replaces modems and mobile data computers per the replacement schedule. And unless there are any questions on that portion, I will turn the presentation back over to Lieutenant Colonel Malesko.
Thank you, Jennifer. Nevada's highways don't just connect communities, they connect global events, tourism, and economic growth. From the Stanley Cup to the Super Bowl, from wildlife evacuations to record-breaking tourism surges, our troopers ensure safety amongst the state's biggest moments. With Major League Baseball coming to Las Vegas and the return of Formula One, our responsibilities continue to expand with already nearly 3,000 special events and contract services annually statewide. We serve every corner of the state, from the bright lights of Las Vegas to the high-altitude passes of Lake Tahoe, the growing city of Reno to the remote highways of Elko. Nevada is more than just where we work, it's our home. Keeping it safe is our duty. Service, sacrifice, and honor. We pause to remember Sergeant Michael Abate and Trooper Alberto Felix, who made the ultimate sacrifice. On November 30th, 2023, both were struck and killed by a fleeing impaired driver that failed to move over while assisting a stranded motorist. Their loss is felt not just within our ranks, but across the country. Their sacrifice, along with the other self-reported 91 responders killed roadside over the past 2 years, reinforces the urgency of strengthening protections for those who serve on our roadways. We will never forget. Traffic safety isn't just our responsibility, it's a shared commitment that requires action, and we are leading from the fronts. To continue progress, we are requesting legislative support for 3 bills in the upcoming weeks. It's Assembly Bill 54, Move Over Law Enhancement, Senate Bill 37, the Road Rage Law, and Senate Bill 56, DUI testing and reporting. We can't afford to be reactive. These measures will save lives and make Nevada's roads safer. With your support, we can turn policy into protection. Progress is only possible when we take action. Over the past 2 years, critical advancements have been made through legislative and strategic efforts. These wins will save lives, but our work is far from over. Momentum matters. Continued legislative support ensures that Nevada remains at the forefront, and for this, we thank you. As I said earlier, every trooper carries the weight of the lives they've saved and the ones they couldn't. We have seen too many take their last breath on our highways. We do this work because we believe every death is preventable, and what we do makes a difference. The next life saved could be a mother, a father, a child. It could be someone you know, and it could be you. We are purpose-driven and people-powered. We are the Nevada Highway Patrol. Let's continue to build a safer Nevada together. Thank you. I will now turn the presentation over to Colonel Conway.
Thank you, Patrick Conway, for the record. To the Senate Committee on Finance, Assembly, and the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means, and the Joint Subcommittee on Public Safety, we thank you for your time, energy, and support. Chair, on this slide you will find my contact information and just a few of the names of those who made this presentation possible. Should the committee need anything at all, please do not hesitate to contact me. I'd like now to open it up to any questions if there are any. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel, and Ms. Ramos. We do have a couple of questions, and we'll start with Senator Wynn. And one thing I just will remind the committee as well as our respondents, we want to focus on the budget. Make sure we focus because this is our financial piece, and certainly there'll be an opportunity in another committee to discuss policy. Okay. Thank you all. Senator Wynn?
You know, this was kind of briefly discussed before, and I believe that you guys are all a part of this contract with All-Star Talent. Are these, can you discuss efforts, both successful and unsuccessful, that you guys have utilized or that you did utilize during this current biennium to reduce vacancy rates?
Patrick Conway for the record. Thank you for the question. The recruitment and hiring processes that the department is currently employing are targeting more than just an individual division. And so they are being handled at the director's office level on behalf of the division, the department as a whole. So the division will interact with the director's office and talk about needs, talk about ideas and thoughts regarding recruitment for targeted positions. But I think the deputy director discussed it earlier and identified that in the current environment, in the current pool of people that we're targeting and trying to hire, there's more interest right now in a job that maybe you can work Monday through Friday, weekends off, and so it's much more difficult to entice people to do the shift work kind of job. I've been, not to be bragging, but I've been involved in this business now. February 20th will be 52 years. And I've watched this evolve over time. And there was a period of time where we didn't really need to do any marketing or recruiting. We just had thousands of people that wanted to do the job. And that is not necessarily the case today. It's kind of cyclical. I anticipate that it'll go the other way eventually. But where we are now in history, we just don't have people coming to us. So we do have to market, and we are hiring those who are interested and qualified, but they're not always interested in working the shift work or the kind of job that this requires. So we discuss it all the time. We work in conjunction with the department's overall efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Now we'll go to Assemblyman Hibbets. Assemblymember Hibbets. You okay? All right. Then we will go to Assemblymember Tracy Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. It's great to see you here. I'm going to give you 3 rapid-fire questions. Mine are all about the ignition interlock. So are you ready? Okay. Got a pen. When does the Department of Public Safety expect to receive Ledge Commission approval to establish regulations for collecting fees? That's my first one. Oh, thank you. We're playing musical chairs. Okay, so there's number 1. When do we expect Legislative Commission approval to establish regulations with regard to collecting the fees? How much program fee revenue does the agency project would be collected over the 25-27 biennium? And then, if the projected program fee revenue collected over the biennium is insufficient, how would the agency fund the recommended program officer position? Okay?
Hello, thank you. For the record, my name is Danielle Hafeman, H-A-F-E-M-E-N. I'm the Ignition Interlock Program Manager. Currently, our regulations right now are with you guys in-house for the attorney. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, I thought you had your hand up, sorry. It's been a while to draft them with the changes in the language and having them separated from the committee. It's been taking longer than expected, but we are expecting them back soon. We can get the amount that we want to or projecting to collect to you. I don't have that information on me. But as soon as they are passed, we will start collecting immediately. Jen has it, okay.
Jennifer Ramos for the record. Can you repeat the second question, please? I just want to make sure I understand it fully before I answer.
Certainly. So the first one is, when are we going to get through the Legislative Commission? I believe I heard you say, as soon as you get the language back.
James Simpson for the record. I was with Highway Patrol until a month ago. I was working with this with Danielle Hafeman here. So we already had our public hearing. We sent the recommendations, the revisions to LCB. We're waiting for those to come back, but being the start of session, they're very busy too. So as soon as we get that back, we want to have the last hearing and get those published and in place.
Thank you for that. Second question then is about how much ignition interlock fee revenue do you project would be collected over the 25-27 biennium? So what total revenue? And then if there's not enough revenue, how is the agency going to fund the recommended program officer position?
Jennifer Ramos for the record. Initially in FY24, we initiated the ignition interlock budget account for the purpose of collecting the fees. At that time, our projections were totaling $364,500 annually. That's annualized over a variety of factors, including 11 ignition interlock installation centers that we'd be working. That will I know it's a lot. So over time, we expect that number will increase as well, the number of vendors we work with, which would in turn increase our revenue. So we're kind of basing the projection off that FY24 work program that we did. As far as the question with regards to funding the position, initially, an agency request we'd submitted as a highway fund request because we weren't confident that, of course, we are anticipating on collecting fees this spring. However, we're probably not going to have enough fee revenue actualized to be able to support the position. So it would be our hope that we would have liked for it to be highway funded initially so that maybe we could get our bearings, establish that fee revenue, and then in turn reimburse the highway fund from the fees.
Okay.
That was the initial request, yes.
Okay, thank you. So what happens if we don't have enough revenue to fund the position?
Jennifer Ramos for the record. I don't know that we will have the revenue to support it, and it would take something like the highway fund request to support a position. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the clarity. Thank you, Chair.
You're very welcome. Next question to Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. My two quick questions are on budget account 4721. And so for my questions on these ones, and thank you so much again for your presentation. But for this budget account, how much additional grant funding does the agency project would be received related to non-commercial motor vehicle inspection activities if the recommended positions are approved?
Jennifer Ramos for the record. These positions regarding the 6 CVSIs have been approved in the current active grants that are 3-year grants. And upcoming awards. So the funding is there. The average award ranges from, $4 million to $4.5 million for each of those 3-year awards, and we get a new award every year. So the funding is there. It's been approved on the federal side.
Okay, thank you. And just my quick follow-up, Chair. What's the agency's plan to address the non-compliance with the maintenance of effort threshold requirement?
I don't think we have that information available today. Can I get back to you with that?
Yes, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And Pat Conway for the record, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir. If you wouldn't mind, when you get the information, give it to the committee secretary and we can all have that, okay? All right. Senator Titus, you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for, addressing my concerns in rural. Looking at your chart that's been up there for a while, it's pretty concerning in my rural areas. So thank you for doing everything you can to put more folks up there. My budget questions are E279, additional cell phones, and then the E725, the modems. I don't care how many new cell phones you get, because I get new cell phones all the time, and I still don't have cell phone access. And so I appreciate that the additional cell phones and all of that, but the modems I think are going to be one of the more important things is the access once you have these new phones. Are you looking at different carriers that might have more, or do you go different carriers? Because I have 2 different phones. In some areas I have great AT&T, in some areas I have great Verizon, and frankly, I'm going to go to Starlink in a while and T-Mobile because they're going to be Starlink. So do you have ability to change who your carriers are? Because it is so different where you are.
For the record, Danny Gortari. I'm the Administrative Service Officer 2 for the department, and I'm the fleet administrator as well. So I really thank you for the question. And the response to that question is for this particular enhancement, which is $89,282, part of the solution to what we're doing is hardware, and then it's also an additional cellular service. So this is for our mobile data computers that are in the vehicle. So when we have an officer out there, we were receiving a lot of complaints. And the complaints were they would just lose their ability to use their mobile data computer. And it's, I think I've heard you mentioning your concerns in other hearings, and that's very true. You know, when they're out in the middle of the Ely, the rural areas, and we've identified 57 locations, or I guess it'd be where we're assigning the troopers, it's a big problem. And so what this essentially does is add another modem to the router that's in the vehicle to switch. And so what we have found, then you're going to have two different services. You're going to have, the primary services that you can have, and that's going to help our uptime for our troopers in terms of using their mobile data computer. So if you're out there in the middle of nowhere, and let's say, for example, we have an issue where there's a natural disaster or something, you want these people to have, our troopers and members, to have connectivity, okay? And also if they're, if they're going to do checkups on, for example, one of the things that it's continuous access to critical systems. That's a big benefit to having both of those services. Okay, so this particular enhancement is to give the troopers the ability to seamlessly switch between two different carriers should one drop off and the other one pick up.
So thank you for that. Real quick follow-up. Yes, and like I said, I have two different carriers, but I'm still in blackout zone. So what I switched to was Starlink. I have a portable Starlink that when I go on my elk hunts and I'm literally no cell control, my gosh, I can get on the computer. Are you looking at anything past those, the traditional carriers? Because it's out there.
Our command staff, Danny Gortari, for the record, Gortari, Administrative Service Officer. We're always looking at innovative ways to improve what we're trying to do. Certainly, we would look at that.
I can tell you
that is a capability
works.
that I know that, the Lieutenant Colonel has mentioned to me that, we definitely want to look into that. And usually when we dig in, we do a thorough assessment of it. So we definitely would have to do that. There would obviously be a cost associated with it.
Much to my husband's chagrin, I had my Starlink satellite sitting there in elk camp, and it works. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for keeping us safe.
Thank you, Senator. And we will end with Assembly Member Anderson.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. It is actually what has been up on the screen. My question has to deal with that, the growing crisis, the readiness and response. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. And I really looked at USA Parkway the most. That's the one that I saw the most because of my district, but then also when I was looking at some other areas. I just want to make sure I've got this correct, is that yes, there are some filled positions, but more importantly, in some of our areas, we do not have enough people that are driving around. Let's just use USA Parkway as the example to make sure that it is in fact safe. It is safe, but we do not have enough people at this time in the USA Parkway. I mean, there's a few other areas, Hawthorne, where there are many openings. Is that just because there's a stronger partnership with the local law enforcement, or how is that working exactly? Because this is very concerning when we take a look at some of our accidents in some areas.
Patrick Conmay, for the record. Thank you for the question. I'm not going to try and gloss over anything. We are struggling, and we are struggling especially in our rural areas. USA Parkway did have some major concerns a while ago. Those have improved slightly. Again, not trying to gloss over anything. That has improved slightly. But overall, especially when we're talking in the rural communities, there are occasions when there is not coverage, and we're relying on call-outs, and we're relying on overtime and other things. And I believe the Deputy Director touched on this as well. We have had discussions about possible other alternative means to cover during this crisis time until we can turn these numbers around. We continue to explore potential opportunities to provide that additional coverage everywhere that we can. But again, I'm not going to try to mislead you. We have a problem, and we are fully aware of that problem and working on it pretty much exclusively right now to try and address it.
Thank you, Chair, for that time to be able to ask that question, because I feel like some of the issues are also related to some policy discussions that have taken place. So hopefully we can continue some of those policy discussions around some different funding formulas. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
You're very welcome. Seeing no further questions, then we will just thank you. Thank you, Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel, and Ms. Ramos. Thank you for your presentation. And we'll continue the work. Continue the work.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you,
Okay.
Committee.
Very welcome. Okay, our next budget that we will review is 47. I just lost my number. Here it is. 3740. 3740. Please come on up. And after them will be 4687. Please again remember to state your name and spell it for the record, and then begin whenever you are ready. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I am Tamara Jackson, Tamrah Jackson, the Department of Public Safety, Parole and Probation Chief. Present with me in Carson City are Deputy Chief Aaron Evans and Parole and Probation Senior Fiscal Officer Andy McCool. Also attending in Las Vegas is our Deputy Chief James Schubert. The Division of Parole and Probation fulfills a critical public safety need through investigations and effective supervision of individuals statewide. This is done by conducting pre-sentence, pardons, post-conviction, pre-parole, re-entry, and interstate compact investigations. We support supervised individuals on their path of reintegration by providing guidance and connecting them with resources. We monitor and enforce compliance of conditions of supervised individuals. We utilize graduated sanctions and report violations to the courts and parole board. And we also collect restitution payments and disperse those funds to the victims. We are pleased to share a comparison of our 2023 caseload and 2025 caseload in relation to staffing. While we still have some work to do, we have made significant progress towards reaching our goal of an average caseload of 100%. For example, the greatest change was our Reno office, which went from an average caseload of 176% to 123%. We currently supervise 19,852 individuals statewide. 11,663 of those are on probation, 5,892 are on parole, 2,179 are lifetime supervision sex offenders, and 118 are conditional release inmates. This year, we struggled to identify how to proceed in regard to the maintenance decision units due to not having any updated projections nor a contracted vendor. Our division does not employ economists or statisticians, so we took this task very seriously, utilizing current data, past data trends, the state demographer's growth rate of 1.4%, and the knowledge that our data or numbers stay fairly consistent. We also considered potential legislative changes that may impact the supervised population, but did not believe that would be a significant factor. We reviewed the most recent projections provided by the James F. Austin Institute, JFA, from 2023, and were unable to cross-reference that data provided in the projections from JFA to our actual data. We compared those projections to the actual data for fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25, and in some cases we found significant disparities. If we utilized this outdated projection, it would have created a cascading effect, leaving parole and probation with elevated numbers in some instances and inadequate numbers in others, impacting our caseload-driven positions. Utilizing all of this data and research, we provided our best reasonable estimate of growth and/or reduction as shown in the M decision units. There was a clear disparity in the growth rate of the M201 decision unit in relation to those outdated JFA projections, and an issue in how the prior M204 decision unit was calculated. The result of our analysis is M201 gains 1 parole and probation supervisor, 3 specialist 4s, and 7 specialist 3s. M202 would lose 12 DPS officers, 2 DPS sergeants, or 2 DPS lieutenants, and gain 2 DPS sergeants. M204 would gain 3 specialist 2s. Last session, a pardons writer reportedly completed an average of 48 reports per year. That was an oversight, as they only complete 24, and that is why the additional positions of 3 specialist 4s, that would be for the pardons writer unit. At this time, it is our understanding that there may be modifications to these decision units. However, I will leave that explanation to the Governor's Finance Office Deputy Director. Decision Unit E276 funds an increase in our drug testing supplies due to a continuous rise in costs related to these supplies. Decision Unit E277 provides increased funding of $199,926 each fiscal year. Over the last biennium, we have work programmed funds from other categories to continue providing funds for those eligible for parole, but are indigent and their initial plan to prove to be non-viable. This funding allows us to subsidize the first few weeks of housing for parolees who are absent family, sponsors, or resources to bridge their release into the community. Decision Unit E278 increases the funding for psychosexual evaluations. These evaluations are mandatory for certain sexual offenses and ordered by the court, which the division has no control over. The cost of these evaluations increased a few years ago, as did the number of evaluations being ordered. The request would increase the budget amount to match what was expended in fiscal year 24. Decision Unit E279 funds increased costs for our initial equipment and uniform packages for newly hired officers due to inflation and modified equipment requirements. E280 funds increased costs related to our ballistic vest replacements. Decision Unit E281 funds our state-funded house arrest program. Electronic monitoring may be ordered by a court, and it is also used as an intermediate sanction to avoid reincarceration. The cost of electronic monitoring is far less expensive than jail or prison. E282 funds the annual software and maintenance fees for our records management system. Decision Unit E284 funds an increase to our training budget, which will allow the division to send additional staff to training, such as that of the American Probation and Parole Association, which provides guidance, best practices, and ideas for more effective supervision. E285 provides funding for mobile data plans for our officers. Currently, they use a hotspot through their state-issued cell phones. However, this creates delays due to connectivity issues when the phone is moved away from the MDC. They utilize their phones also to collect evidence, as well as making phone calls and texts while they're at residences and at places of employment. E285 provides funding for moving on. Decision Unit E292 funds a Program Officer 1 and associated software to allow our officers to issue citations for a variety of offenses as required by AB 440 from the 81st Legislative Session. Decision Unit E293 is a product which has been researched by our division and provides large amounts of information to assist in locating fugitives for arrest and return. It may also be utilized to locate victims so that we can actually disperse the restitution payments to them. Decision Unit E294 downgrades a current DPS sergeant to a parole and probation supervisor. This position currently supervises civilian positions in our re-entry embedded unit. This change would be consistent with other similar positions throughout the division. E295 funds high-speed broadband for internet service in our Winnemucca office. Currently, they have intermittent service and aren't always able to utilize that service properly. Decision Unit E283 is fairly comprehensive and covers several different positions, so I'm going to try and break it down into simple terms. Parole and Probation has been reviewing our current caseload ratios and comparing them to newly created national standards, as well as trying to understand internally what is reasonable given the number of increased tasks required of each position over the years. In addition, the McNeil versus Nevada 2016 decision changed the way we supervise lifetime supervision sex offenders. This removed the search and seizure, reporting, drug testing, and other conditions from lifetime supervision offenders. Ultimately, the only enforceable condition now is ensuring that they do not reside within a certain number of feet from a park, playground, or school. As a result, one of the biggest changes we would be requesting is to move the supervision ratio of this group from 25-1 to 200-1. Based upon our review, we found several ratios which should also be modified to more closely align with national best practices, where research shows that lower caseloads result in lower arrest rates, lower probation violation rates, and lower recidivism rates. In the majority of these adjustments, our request still falls above those outlined in the national standards. This is why we have requested standalone positions not related to caseloads to assist with supporting our officers and specialists. The caseload ratio adjustment will result in a net loss of 18 officers and 3 sergeants. We are requesting to retain 1 sergeant and add a lieutenant as standalone positions to address the administrative needs of our southern office due to the significant amount of work related to those positions. We are requesting to retain 7 officer positions and 1 sergeant as standalone as an extradition unit, as this is something that takes extensive time away from our officers, who should be allowed to focus on case management and provide our supervised individuals with proactive assistance and guidance they deserve to complete their term of supervision successfully. We are requesting a small number of administrative staff to be placed in offices throughout the state to support operations. While much of what we do is modified every session to increase and sometimes decrease positions according to projections, our administrative staff has never been included, so as NPP grows, the administrative positions do not. This decision unit would also create 2 new groups, the Administrative Tracking Unit and a dedicated Interstate Compact Office. The Administrative Tracking Unit would be responsible for handling caseloads that are not currently included in any projections which relate to staffing. This unit would cover caseloads such as deportee caseloads, parole violators who are pending their appearance before the board, and those that are in custody out of state, which are currently additional duties being added to staff who are supposed to be handling other tasks. The Interstate Compact Office would be responsible for administrative tasks related to interstate transfers to include review of eligibility requirements, completing transfer documents such as reporting instructions and departure notices, issuance of travel passes, training, and other tasks. These tasks are currently completed by officers who also carry a full caseload. Nevada is one of the few states that does not have a dedicated compact office. And finally, we would be expanding our polygraph positions, adding 1 additional position in the south and 1 position in the north. The vast majority of the sex offenders under supervision have statutorily mandated conditions ordered by the court or the parole board to submit to polygraph examinations. These are an enhancement to supervision and serve to detect violations, criminal reoffense, and expose motivations and thought patterns. The majority of sex offenders subjected to periodic polygraph examinations are not being examined due to the lack of resources available, which has negatively impacted supervision effectiveness. This chart shows our current approved caseload ratios and our newly proposed ratios as described in Decision Unit E283. Sorry for that pause. Tamara Jackson for the record. I realized we're missing one of our decision units on this slideshow, so I wanted to add it. I'm not sure which. It is 2 court services manager positions, 1 for the north and 1 for the south, which would replace, take the place of existing lieutenants. This is over a civilian unit, and so we would like to provide additional support and options for our civilians to grow. E286. So my apologies for that. All right. I want to take a moment to highlight the hardworking professionals in the Parole and Probation Division. They work tirelessly to provide support, guidance, and access to resources, attend community events, and when necessary, protect our citizens by holding supervised individuals accountable for their actions. A recent example, our officers made an arrest earlier this month in Reno, where the individual being supervised was found to be in possession of 16 firearms, multiple knives, machetes, swords, drug paraphernalia, and even a cannon. Our parole and probation team remained dedicated to building safer, stronger communities. We want to thank you for allowing us to present our budget request today. Our contact information is on the next slide, and we are prepared to answer questions.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. We do have some questions here from the committee. We're going to start with Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you for the presentation, and I am a proud graduate of the University of Nevada, Reno, but I did have to ask my friend here from Vegas if that cannon was the Fremont. Anyway, moving on, I would ask actually that the Governor's Finance Office, if I think Mr. Palmer, I think you were here, if you could join us for just a moment, because this actually is part of it as well. Thank you. Can you kind of explain why the Governor's Finance Office entered into a contract with a vendor that would not be able to provide the projected parole and probation caseload information until after the session concluded? And then if there's been any sort of discussion about possibly revising that contract with maybe a new vendor or trying to get that so we can start looking at this a little bit better?
Thank you for the question. Curtis Palmer for the record, Deputy Director for the Governor's Finance Office. The JFA Institute agreement expired in March of 2024. A new solicitation and vendor and so forth was supposed to go on the July BOE. However, there were some contractual procedures that needed to be resolved, and that did not finish until November, and that was not enough time for the vendor to then get us the proper data that we need. I learned about this just recently. I reached out to the president of the JFA Institute and asked if they could step in and help out. They have agreed. So we're in the process of putting together a short-term contract to facilitate that number, those numbers to come back. Parole and Probation has put together quickly the numbers that they need to provide that report. So pending the contract, if there's no more problems with that, we should have JFA numbers to complete this fiscal cycle within 2 to 3 weeks.
Thank you. So that clarifies my big question on that one. The next one has to do actually with the decision. So I don't know if you're still in the hot seat or not on this one. It has to do with the overall recommendation to basically eliminate those 12 positions in Decision Unit M202. And that has to do with the agency caseload projection. So I was kind of confused about that.
Tamara Jackson for the record. So one of the big things that happened is really related to that lifetime supervision sex offender change, because when you look at changing it from a 25-to-1 ratio to a 200-to-1 ratio, it ends up ultimately potentially losing a lot more officers than that. And that is part of why we kind of did this overall real review of everything we were doing. This probably should have been looked at prior, again, because it just changed what we can and cannot do in regard to that population. And so having a 25-to-1 ratio is really not necessary in order to fulfill what we're allowed statutorily to do with that population group.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
You're very welcome. Now we'll go to Assemblymember Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you for what you do, right? The almost 20,000 people that you're serving are not in our prisons and jails. They're in our communities, and I appreciate your efforts there. My question is really about caseload. I'm confused between two decision units, so I'm hoping that you can just provide some clarity. It looks like there's a conflict between two different decision units relative to what your ratios are. So can you talk about the standard caseload to adjust the caseload ratios for low-risk pre-release and pardons investigations from the previously approved legislative ratios? It just looks like one is 1 to 150 for low risk, and another decision unit is 1 to 175.
Okay, Tamara Jackson for the record. I believe what we're looking at is, so normally low-risk supervision has been a 1 to 150 ratio. However, we developed the supervision pods, which work with our specialists, our civilian series as well. And so it kind of changed how we look at it. If we're outside of the Reno or Las Vegas offices, we do not have those specialist pods, so that we can't utilize them in that fashion. So the 150-to-1 ratio would really be related to anything outside of our Reno or Las Vegas office, or someone who may not fit into those supervision pods. Okay, and then the second question on the pardons. Yes, so I'm not sure what happened last session, but somehow it got reported that that one person could do 48 reports per year, and that's not accurate. It's 24 per year per person, so they do 2 per month. It's a very extensive investigation, and we didn't want to reduce the number of pardons we're providing to the board, because that would just continue to increase the number of people waiting on pardons. We already have an extensive 100+ waiting list, and we really want to try and start actually reducing that waiting list. So the 2 additional would just put us back to what we believe we should have been at, and then the 1 additional on top of that is going to be able to add a few more pardons, hopefully pardons reports to each pardons board, so that we can, again, try to cut through the backlog.
Thank you. And pre-release, can you just talk about what's the ratio for pre-release? Thank you.
Tamara Jackson, for the record. I'm going to turn that one over to Deputy Chief Aaron Evans to respond.
Thank you for the question, Aaron Evans, Deputy Chief, for the record. Our pre-release is getting people out of prison. They've been granted parole, and now the process is getting them back into the community, and we do the investigations, make sure they're going to a good place. The current methodology is using like a caseload ratio of 250, but it's not a caseload process. It's more of a parole grant comes in, and then the inmate gets out. So counting it at a 250-to-1 at any given time, that number fluctuates because it's based on the number of parole grants that come in. We want to change it based on the number of grants that come in, and it takes, X number of people to do a certain number of grants, and that's what should drive the number of pre-release specialists to do that work, not like a caseload. It's like a widgets. If you have 30 grants come in, one person can do those 30. But if you have 35 come in, you need more people because it's over that ratio. So we don't feel that a caseload in that realm is the best, because it's a short term. Something comes in and a result is produced. So we wanted to change the methodology of how those positions are accounted for and potentially funded.
Let's take care of that. Good. All right, next question, Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you so much, and again, thank you for all that you do, and you actually answered one of my questions. So I have 2 others. If you could discuss the proposed elimination of DPS officer positions and the addition of parole and probation specialist positions to support the caseload-driven changes.
Tamara Jackson, for the record. If I understand the question correctly, we would be lowering the ratio for our low-risk pod specialists, so that they would be able to handle. Right now, they're at a 250-to-1, which is pretty extreme. We've found that was our best guess in prior sessions of what would be appropriate, but it's not being able to be effectively managed. So we wanted to lower that to 175-to-1, which would give them more opportunity to provide, again, proactive resources and things of that nature for that population. And so that's why that would increase the number. And which officer positions were you asking about?
I think you answered it. It was just the DPS officer positions, but that makes sense.
Thanks.
The specialists, yeah. And follow-up, Chair? And then just looking at all of this, is it that the supervision ratios, you're not changing it until you get the contractor? And if so, why is that?
Tamara Jackson, for the record. My understanding is our ratios are legislatively approved, so whatever is legislatively approved is what the contractor is going to have to utilize. If we maintain our old approved ratios, that would be the numbers that the new contractor would utilize, and that's why we're here seeking kind of an adjustment in that to really try and focus on best practices as identified nationwide.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Senator Wynn?
Thank you. I was looking at the stuff around the Interstate Compact Office, and I saw that you were, there's 6 DPS officer positions that complete administrative interstate compact tasks that could be completed by civilian staff. Are there any potential issues when you have civilian staff rather than sworn personnel performing those administrative functions related to the interstate compact for adult offender supervision?
Tamara Jackson for the record. I am going to turn this question over to Major James Schubert in Las Vegas.
Good afternoon, James Schubert for the record, SHUBERT. No, it's actually best practices is to have a separation of that. The best way I could describe it is probably a judge setting someone to probation and then that judge actually going out and enforcing the conditions. You wouldn't want that. You'd want that separation of duties. So the interstate compact unit would be handling all those functions to include the request to come in and out of the state. And they would review it. They would do the processing. There's 2 different systems they have to use, so they'd be the experts in that. And then they push it, once it's approved, they would push it to an officer to do the actual supervision. The Interstate Compact Office would also do other administrative tasks, such as file setup assignments. You have duty specialists that see people that come in and out right after sentencing. They do training, they have to do annual training with the federal system, the ICOTS. And they also train local judges, PDs, DAs, such like that. So right now, that's all managed by a sergeant, a lieutenant, who, and then the 6 officers, as you mentioned, that also have a caseload. So they're doing double duty, and it's very difficult for them to keep up.
So the people doing the civilian staff is mostly just processing the paperwork, and ultimately the people that are overseeing the offenders or probationers are the officers. So thank you for that. Just kind of switching topics, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer this or someone here in Carson City would be able to. Can you discuss the need to maintain the 3 existing DPS lieutenant positions in the recommended administrative services officer positions? If the recommended administrative officer positions are approved to oversee the court services unit. And that's regards to the E286.
Tamara Jackson for the record. So right now, our lieutenant positions are actually calculated and based upon our sworn ratios, and our civilian positions aren't necessarily included in a lot of those. So we're already kind of utilizing those positions in a fashion that they shouldn't have been because they're being pulled out of operations. So the goal is to actually get those lieutenants back into the operational capacity that they should be in, and then put civilian managers in those positions to handle those issues.
Okay, and this is kind of in line with that too. Chair, sorry, I have quite a few questions here. You know, through the governor's recommended budget includes 2 administrative services positions. If those were approved, the agency plans to reclassify positions to the parole and probation manager positions, those grade 39 positions, which is not currently an approved class specification. So with that in mind, if the agency's request to create the parole and probation manager class specification series is not approved by the Division of Human Resources Management, can you please discuss whether the administrative services officer positions would be the appropriate class specifications to manage the court services unit? That was a lot.
Yes, thank you for the question. Tamara Jackson for the record. We believe that would be the approximate equivalent. The division has prepared and does have the documents created to go to DHRM to have those class specs reviewed and hopefully ultimately approved with that court service manager position. But it goes back to that class and compensation study that's being conducted, and so we were asked to put that on hold. We do have it prepared and ready to go as soon as we are open to provide that to the public.
Thank you, and I'm kind of going to switch to the citation program. And while I know a lot of traffic is always and disruption of traffic systems is associated with me and some of the bills I brought, this one was not. I'm talking about Assembly Bill 440 from the 81st session, so in 21. Can you discuss why associated resources needed to support the citation program were not requested during the 23 legislative session? Because they see that they are added in at this time.
Tamara Jackson, for the record. That was just an oversight when building the budget for 2023. Unfortunately, we did miss that, and so when we realized that, we made sure this was a priority to be added to this. And in the interim, we've just maintained that our officers know that if they believe a citation is warranted, obviously this would be for people who are not on parole or probation, that they would have to contact an allied agency to assist in providing that service.
And how will this added budgetary aid to, why can't you just continue doing it that way? What will this bring?
Tamara Jackson, for the record, we could continue doing it. We just wanted to make sure that we were in compliance with the statute as written, and it did require that everyone have the ability to write citations, so we didn't want to be in violation of that statute.
Perfect. This kind of leads me into this. Can you discuss how misdemeanor citations have been impacted since NRS 171.1771 was amended to require these misdemeanor citations in lieu of arrest for certain violators?
Thank you for the question, Aaron Evans. There has been no impact. The criteria to issue a citation in these situations is a very rare occurrence for a parole or probation officer. As the chief mentioned, it would be for somebody that's not on supervision, that has committed a misdemeanor crime in our presence, that doesn't have any prior failures to appear or citations for this offense. And our focus is primarily on our supervised individuals, and very rarely do we get involved, with a non-supervised in a misdemeanor crime. If that does occur, Highway Patrol, being a sister division, very easy for us to contact, issue a citation, but I can pretty confidently say it has not impacted us at all.
Perfect. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, all of you. I think that's all of our questions here, and so we appreciate you being here. Thank you for going over the budget and answering these questions. We appreciate it. All right, we are on our last budget for the day. Thank you for already moving to get in position. I love it. 4687, please come on up and introduce yourselves for the record, and then go ahead or reintroduce yourself.
Yes.
Then go ahead and start when you're ready.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Amy Davey. I'm the administrator of the Office of Traffic Safety. As I am the caboose this morning, and typically I'm the caboose, I usually try to facilitate sort of the speedy resolution of your meeting. I did not bring a PowerPoint. Also, I find that when I go after NHP, my PowerPoints just don't go well. So I'm just here to answer questions related to 4687. The Office of Traffic Safety is a federal grant pass-through agency. 4687, we have 3 budget accounts in my agency, and 4687 is one of those 3. This is the budget account that has historically been used to bring in federal funds. From this account, we then transfer the funds into our operating account 4688. 2 biennium ago, we began the process of working with the Governor's Finance Office to sort of collapse down to one budget account where we take in the revenue and the expenditures out of one account. This creates, we anticipate this is going to create a lot of efficiency for our agency. Right now, we're having to do duplicative work programs. We're having to do constant voucher transfers between those 2 budget accounts. So I think E900 is our only decision unit in this account. It is a cost-neutral decision unit, and it is intended to just increase efficiency by actually eliminating this budget account, consolidating everything into our operating account, which is 4688. So I may have jumped the gun on your questions, but since that's the only decision unit, I thought I would just start by describing what I think we're going to talk about.
No, I think that's quite all right. I'm looking for questions. I do have one from Assemblymember Brown May.
Thank you, Administrator Davy. It's great to see you, even though you are the caboose on this morning. But I understand Southwest has delayed flight, so it's okay for now. And just for clarity, right, in order to help us get on the record, I appreciate that. Can you talk about the federal requirements mandate that the budget accounts be separate and why federal funding has traditionally been received in the traffic safety budget account prior to being transferred to the highway safety budget?
Thank you for the question, Amy Davy, Office of Traffic Safety. I am not aware that there are federal requirements that require separate accounts. We went back and looked at the history of these two budget accounts, and it appears that, you know, they were set up this way from the beginning. We can see back to 2001 when we were transferred out of DMV. Nobody here was probably around back in those days, but DPS and DMV used to be one agency, and so my division was under DMV, and we can see back that far. We had those two budget accounts. We don't have any federal requirements, and we are aware of a number of other state agencies that receive their federal funds, DETR, Health and Human Services, and disperse those funds out of the same account. So we're not sure why it was set up that way.
Thank you for that. One follow-up, Chair. Thank you. So do you believe, or to what extent, do you think that the elimination of the traffic safety budget account would result in a loss of transparency or accountability associated with the federal funds or expenditures?
Thank you for the question, Amy Davy. We don't see any impact on accountability or transparency. We've built those two budget accounts to be identical. They have the same categories, they have the same, and I apologize, I lost my fiscal officer. She had another appointment she had to go to, but she was prepared to go deep into detail on the fiscal side. But we specifically built those accounts so they have the exact same, they mirror one another. I probably shouldn't say this, but to be honest, it's going to create accountability, and I'll tell you why. When you've got authority in two accounts, that gives us the ability to borrow authority, which I don't think you want us to do. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. We have sometimes we'll have authority in 4687 and not in 4688. And so what you want us to do is come back and ask for that authority, not borrow it between accounts. So I actually think this creates more transparency and accountability.
Thank you very much, Madam Administrator. Any other questions? Okay. You're the caboose. You get off the hook early. I mean, easy. Thank you so much. Thank you all for taking the time to come and present your budget to us and answer all the questions. We really appreciate it. You can run out of here while you can. All right, this brings us to our last agenda item, which is public comment. If you would like to make public comment and you're here in the room, please come on forward. Or if you're in Las Vegas, please go forward to the table in Las Vegas. And seeing none, then we'll go to the phone lines. If you'd like to phone in, that line is 888-475-4499. And the meeting ID number, once again, is 894-3493-4285. BPS, do we have anyone on the line?
Thank you, Chair. Your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, subcommittee, thank you so much for your time and for your diligence. We are dismissed. Thank you, BPS.